We all know the New York Islanders need to get younger, faster, and more skilled. Well, there's a restricted free agent out there who could check almost all of those boxes, but what will it cost to get him and what impact would he have on the Islanders? We'll talk about that and a lot more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey. We have got a lot to discuss on today's show, including restricted free agent J.J. Peterka of the Buffalo Sabres. What impact would he have on the Islanders and what would it cost to get him? We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about a big void in the Islanders lineup that would take a little maneuvering in order for the Islanders to fill it. Plus, the Islanders add a new assistant GM, all that and more coming up on today's show. We're going to start with J.J. Peterka. And again, if the Islanders want to get more offensive firepower, want to add more skill, want to add more goal scoring, especially guys who will shoot the puck, well, J.J. Peterka, who wants out of Buffalo, certainly fits the bill. He is 23 years old, won't turn 24 until January. He is a restricted free agent, and he has told the Buffalo Sabres, I don't want to stay here anymore. And let's face it, that is a situation that leaves Buffalo, a team that has missed the playoffs far too many years in a row, in a bind. Now, what would it take to get J.J. Peterka, and what would he add to the lineup? Well, let's start with the lineup. Last year, 77 games, 27 goals, 68 points, a -1 plus-minus, which is not bad on a Buffalo Sabres team that had a losing record. He was on the ice for 18 minutes and 11 seconds per game, had 6 power play goals for the Buffalo Sabres and 12 power play assists. So clearly you're getting a player who would benefit the Islanders more about power play that just needs to improve. You've got a guy who could play major minutes when needed and somebody who would definitely be an immediate fit on the top 6. He is a player who can definitely add some juice to the offense. And, you look at him, 6 feet, 189 pounds, not a huge guy, but not a small guy either. So, he's not going to be the most physical player out there. Only 30 hits in 77 games. So that's not his forte, but he is a guy who's going to shoot. Attempted 384 shots in 77 games. That is a huge, huge number. Had 173 shots on goal and a shooting percentage of 15.6. And I don't think I have to remind Islanders fans that the New York Islanders as a team last year were 30th in the league in shooting percentage with a 9.2. Now, the Sabres, as I've said, they're the kind of team that is looking for help right now. And if they're going to trade Peterka, they're going to want some offense in return. The problem is the Islanders really don't have offense to give them. You're not trading Cole Yzerman. You're not trading Mathew Barzal or Bo Horvat. Those are, two guys that Matthew Darche has said are part of the core, and they are part of the core. I don't think there's any way around that, all things considered. But I don't think Buffalo at this stage is looking to add draft picks. And I don't think the Islanders should be trading them. Now, if you sign him to an offer sheet and make him that 7-year, let's say $7.5, $8 million a year contract, you'd have to give Buffalo a first, second, and third round pick in 2026. Now, the Islanders don't have a second round pick in 2026, but that would be the level of compensation. So Buffalo was going to want at least that in any trade. That gives Buffalo a certain amount of leverage, but Buffalo loses some leverage because Peterka has clearly said he no longer wants to be a Sabre. You can take a guy like JJ Peterka, and he is not yet in his prime. He's just kind of entering it right now. He can give you 25 to 30 goals, maybe even more with the right line mates. He is a right wing, but he shoots left, so you get the feeling he would be fine on either wing. And he is a player who could definitely boost the Islanders' offense for sure. But who are you going to trade away in order to make that acquisition? I mean, it's going to take a heck of a lot more than aging guys like Anders Lee or Kyle Palmieri. They may be part of the deal if Palmieri is even willing to consider waiving that no trade clause that Lou generously gave him. But, they're not going to want these older guys necessarily. So, I mean, you may be willing to include the Avalanche's 2026 first round pick that they got in the Brock Nelson trade, but I don't see too many other options as far as, is Noah Dobson something that would benefit the Buffalo Sabres? They're going to want more scoring help, I think, than defense help, but they have a lot of needs, just like the Islanders, to fill. And ultimately, you also have to free up the cap space to pay Peterka. Like I said, you're talking probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $7.5 to $8.5 million a year. This is the type of situation, again, where the bad contracts and questionable moves that Lou Lamarello made in recent years to construct this roster come back to hurt the Islanders, because it is just not easy to find a way to acquire a player like Peterka. And look, you got to give something to get something. Could you do Dobson and Lee? Could you do Romanov and Lee? I don't think that's, and maybe Romanov, Lee, and a pick. I don't think, that Lee is certainly unlikely to be a guy who the Sabres would want. Maybe because of his leadership ability and his goal scoring, he could be a stopgap for a year or two for the Buffalo Sabres, or they could keep him and flip him at the trade deadline. But I think they could probably do better with another team offering a trade. And again, the bottom line becomes, from an Islanders perspective, you have to win. You have to put together an offer that the Sabres are willing to accept. And keep in mind also that Peterka has hinted that he wanted out of Buffalo several times, but Buffalo was always resistant. Now they're at the point where they're kind of coming to grips with the fact that, maybe they need to make a move, but it is Peterka saying he will not re-sign in Buffalo, but they're going to want to be compensated. He's one of their better, younger players, and we'll see whether or not Mathew Darche can work out some kind of a deal for Peterka. And again, you don't just have to acquire his rights. If you do it via trade, you've got to sign the kid. So, what you get in a deal is the rights, the RFA rights to sign him. Believe me, before the trigger is pulled, the Islanders are going to want to have negotiated a new contract with Peterka. Otherwise, they are wasting their time making this trade. So, putting it out there, the rumors are there. I don't think the Islanders would be considered favorites. I still think that the Islanders probably should wait to make a big move like this for another year, because I don't think they are more than a muddy middle team the way this roster is currently constructed. But with Peterka, because he's so young, I think you can make an exception where you could bring him in and he could be on this team for 5, 6, 8 years more and still not be old. I mean, in 8 years, he'll be 32. So maybe I'm not in favor of going out and trying to get a big ticket guy this year, because I think this is the retool year, even though the team is reluctant to say that. But I think Peterka, because of his age, because of his skill set, and because of his contract status, you could get him this year and just incorporate him. You start adding up Peterka, Yzerman, whoever you pick first this year. You got 2 first-round picks next year. It starts, Callum Ritchie, it starts to add up with some young offensive talent that this team has been hungering for a very, very long time. All right, more to discuss on today's show. We're going to talk about a void in the Islanders lineup and maybe some ways they could fill it. Plus, the Islanders add a new assistant GM, and it's a familiar name, or at least a familiar last name. We'll talk about that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shells variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk on a road trip or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. That's wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. You look at the New York Islanders lineup right now, and there's a lot of things that need upgrading. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. This team is in the muddy middle, not for one reason, but for a whole bunch of reasons. And there are talent upgrades needed. You need to get faster, younger, more skilled, more physical. We've been through a lot of this, okay? Everydayers are familiar with the fact that this team has many needs, and this is going to be a process for Mathew Darche. But one thing that is evident right now is that the New York Islanders do not have a bona fide second-line center on their roster. They have candidates, but don't have a real checking the boxes. Since they traded Brock Nelson, there is no bona fide 2C. Let's assume Bo Horvat is your 1C. You have candidates for 2C. Right now, at the end of last year, J.G. Pageau was your 2C. I don't think that is a good fit. I think he's fine as a 3C, but to be a second-line center, you want a guy who's going to give you 20 goals and 60 points or something some combination of 20, 25 goals, 60 points. Pageau isn't that guy. Pageau is, the kind of player who will give you 15 goals and 45 points at most. And again, based on where he's at age-wise, most likely those numbers will go down rather than go up unless you all of a sudden put him on a line with an elite player, which, again, the Islanders don't have a 50-goal scorer that you plug in and all of a sudden, J.G. Pageau has 60 assists because he's feeding this scoring machine on his line. That's not happening. So Pageau is best suited to be a 3C. You have a potential eventual second line center in Callum Ritchie. But remember this, Ritchie's a rookie. He has not had extensive NHL experience. And to expect him to be ready to be the second line center immediately may be a tall ask. Now, maybe by the second half of the season, you could do that. Maybe by January, February, March, he's matured enough, gotten used to the speed and size of the NHL game, and proves that he's ready. But keep in mind, Maxim Siplikov, who's older than Callum Ritchie, and was also making an adjustment from the KHL to the NHL. He scored 10 goals last year. And it wasn't a bad season, don't get me wrong. 10 goals, 35 points. Not bad for a, rookie coming over from the KHL. But that's not a second line center's kind of numbers. Again, you want to get to that either 20 goals plus or 50 points plus, 55 points plus. And I don't think Ritchie is ready to do that just yet. Maybe in a year, he'll be the guy. Maybe by the end of the season, he'll be the guy. But not ready for prime time, I think, when it comes to being the second line center. You have the option of moving Mathew Barzal back from the wing to center to fill in your 2C. The problem is, unless you add a guy like JJ Peterka, that leaves you without a legitimate winger on the first line, and the chemistry between Bo Horvat and Mathew Barzal, those two guys do seem to bring out the best in each other when they are line mates. So to me, you're more likely to keep them together rather than to move Barzy down unless you're adding some immediate, ready-to-play talent. Who do you plug back into the first line if you move Barzal down? Are you plugging Anthony Duclair in? You go, Horvat, Lee, Duclair, and then your second line would become what? Barzal, Holmstrom, and Siplikov, or Barzal, Holmstrom, and Palmieri, or again, Palmieri probably better suited to be a third liner at this stage in his career on a good, deep team. He could fill in on the second line, yes, but again, that center spot, just still no perfect fit. I don't think Casey Cizikas makes sense on the second line. He probably is still best suited on the fourth line if you move him back to center. Third line, maybe, but Pageau is better suited for that. So you see the issue that as of right now, there's no clear-cut second line center. And again, the question remains this, and I think it's a big question. I could stick with J.G. Pageau as my 2C this year, probably trade him at the trade deadline if that's the case, and then maybe Ritchie is ready and he steps up. But the underlying big question is this. How serious are the New York Islanders about making the playoffs this year? About squeaking in? Because again, I still only see this team's ceiling the way it's presently put together with all the obstacles and shortcomings that it has. I still see that the ceiling of this roster, the way it's currently constructed, is a wild card team barely making the playoffs, game 80, 81, 82, and a most likely first round exit in 5 games. That's where this team seems to be right now, if everything goes right for them. So do you need to bring in a 2C right away? In my mind, if you're looking at this year as a feeling out process for Mathew Darche, so that by the trade deadline, he's starting to move out some of these older guys, big contracts, guys, who might have a chance to help a contending team down the road, whether that's a Pageau or a Lee or a Pelech or whoever it might be on this team, a Mayfield. If you can do that by the trade deadline, I think those are steps toward this retool that this team so badly needs. But if this team is going all in, and hey, we're going to make the playoffs this year, we are setting our sights on that, and we believe we can do it, and maybe even go on a playoff run, you need to bring in a 2C, because you just don't have one. And if you do move Barzal down, you need a first-line winger to make up for the fact that Barzal will not be on that line. We'll see. We'll see, what Mathew Darche ultimately does. A lot of options, a lot of questions. That's what we're discussing here during the offseason. With the draft a couple of weeks away, we're getting closer and closer to it. All right, we're going to talk about the Islanders' new assistant GM. It's a very familiar name, the family name at least. We'll have that, plus our Islanders' birthday of the day, a native of Czechia who was with the Islanders in the late 80s and early 90s. We'll talk about his impact on the team back then. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. So the Islanders made an announcement on Monday, and the announcement is that they have hired a new assistant GM. And it's the first big front office hire for Mathew Darche. Here's a guy who has a lot of experience. He's young and up and coming at 41 years of age. And we are talking about Ryan Bowness. And if that name sounds familiar, his father, Rick Bowness, former head coach of the New York Islanders. So here's a guy who has been an assistant GM in Ottawa since 2022-2023, was their associate GM in 2024-2025, was with the Pittsburgh Penguins as director of pro scouting, and was part of their front office when they won the Cup in 2017. Also spent time with the Winnipeg Jets / Atlanta Thrashers organization. So to me, this is definitely a step forward, a good hire. I think Bowness is very, very qualified. And here's the deal. The last 3 years, guess what what Ryan Bowness did? He was the general manager for the Belleville Senators. That's the AHL affiliate of Ottawa. Made the playoffs once, had 30 wins or more in all 3 years. Missed out on a playoff spot this year despite being 34, 27, and 11. And we'll see, though, what happens. Here's the bad news from my perspective, at least. As of right now, it appears that Chris Lamarello will remain as the general manager of the Bridgeport Islanders. And fans obviously not going to be happy. We know there's coaching changes going on in Bridgeport, but after back-to-back last place finishes and a historically bad 4 wins at home in 36 home game season, I just have a lot of difficulty figuring out how Chris Lamarello still has a job. And again, I don't like to call for people to get fired. That's never something I am thrilled to do, even though I think sometimes it's the right thing to do. I will advocate for it with a certain amount of regret. But other than the fact that his father signed him to another contract extension that he doesn't seem to deserve on the surface of it, I don't see why Mathew has not moved on from Chris Lamarello as the general manager of the Bridgeport Islanders. So much needs to change down in Bridgeport, and the record speaks for itself. So somehow, some way, Chris Lamarello is still employed by the New York Islanders, and we will see if that changes between now and training camp opening up in September. But as of right now, it does not look like Chris Lamarello is moving on, and he will remain the general manager of the Bridgeport Islanders. But Ryan Bowness, welcome to the New York Islanders organization. And again, like father, like son, right? Rick Bowness was a former Islanders head coach, assistant coach, and the Bowness family continues their relationship with the Islanders organization. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and Monday was the 58th birthday. Monday was the 58th birthday of former Islanders winger David Volek, 6 feet, 185 pounds, a native of Prague in the Czech Republic, 10th round pick of the Islanders back in 1984, came to the island in 1988-89, scored 25 goals as a rookie and 59 points, had a 60-point season in 1991-92, was part of the 92-93 team that reached the conference final, had 4 goals and an assist in 10 games that year, played 396 career NHL games, 95 goals, 249 points, 201 penalty minutes, all of his NHL career with the Islanders, add 5 goals, 10 points in 15 playoff games. Volek, pretty good goal scorer and a big part of the Islanders during that era. One of his better games as an Islander, it's easy, December 20th, 1990, Islanders hosting the Hartford Whalers at the Nassau Coliseum. Cue up Brass Bonanza. Peter Sidorkiewicz is the goalie for Hartford. Glenn Healy in between the pipes for your New York Islanders. And in the first period of this game, with Randy Ladouceur in the box for high sticking, our Islanders' birthday of the day, David Volek scores his 12th goal of the year. Pat LaFontaine and Jeff Norton with the assists on the power play. Islanders up 1-0. Later in the period, a little less than 5 minutes later, Volek and Joe Ricci set up Randy Wood at even strength. 2-0 Islanders after 1. In the second period, the Islanders extend their lead as Volek scores again. Wood and LaFontaine with the helpers. And then in the third period, after Hartford scores twice, Carey Wilson and Randy Ladouceur with those goals, Volek closes out the scoring with an empty netter. Glenn Healy gets the only assist in a rough and tumble game that saw a lot of fights. The Islanders beat the Hartford Whalers 4-2 for David Volek, our Islanders' birthday of the day. 3 goals, 1 assist. That's a 4-point game. He's a +2. He had 4 shots on goal. He scored the game winner and helped the Islanders. He was in on every one of the Islanders' goals in this 4-2 win. So David Volek is our Islanders birthday of the day. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There is no off season. We'll bring you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. You can find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYRVSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders throughout this critical off season. And it's always great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you anytime. Everydayers, we are back tomorrow. We'll have the latest rumors and the latest draft information as we get closer and closer to the 2025. Wow, I'm going far ahead. NHL draft coming up in just a couple of weeks. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.